Okay, so I'm going to talk a little economics today. And in particular, I'm going to talk about inflation and globalization. So, first, we'll start with inflation. What is inflation? That's pretty simple, right? Inflation is rising prices over time. So, if we break that down, I'll give you an example. Let's say that the price of eggs goes from $5 to $10, right? We call that inflation. Eggs are the example you see in the news all the time. If the price of eggs doubles, then the inflation rate was 100% over the period of time for which it doubled, right? And I'm going to ask you a question. If the price of eggs goes from $5 to $10, what does that imply for the person purchasing the eggs? The truth is I haven't given you enough information to answer that question yet, right? It was a trick question. In reality, if the price of eggs doubles, but your wages also double, then what happens? Well, nothing happens. All that happens is that the people who put the price tags on the shelves have to work harder, right? So, in other words, in order to understand the effects of inflation, you must also understand the relationship between wages and prices. If prices inflate and wages inflate faster than prices, then your buying power actually increases. In other words, if the price of eggs goes from $5 to $10, but your wage triples, then you can buy more eggs than you could before, right? But that's not usually what happens, right? In the examples today, generally, the price of eggs doubles and your wage stagnates, right? Maybe it goes up a little, but it doesn't keep pace with inflation. And what this means is that your buying power diminishes. And what that leads to, ultimately, is, well, one day you might find yourself having a hard time affording eggs or groceries or your mortgage or your rent, right? If inflation outpaces wages, eventually people are going to have a hard time affording the things they need to survive. They're going to have a hard time buying necessities. And what does that lead to? Well, it leads to one of two things. It leads to some kind of solution to fix the relationship between wages and prices, or it leads to revolution, right? In other words, there's kind of a spectrum of solutions here between peaceful and violent. Either the people organize and they fix the relationship between prices and wages, or you just start knocking on your neighbor's door when you're hungry with a gun, right? That's revolution, right? In other words, there's kind of a spectrum of a revolution here. You can peacefully revolt and change the economy, change the relationship between wages and prices peacefully, or you can just start taking things when you need them from other people. And that's crime, that's theft, right? We generally don't want the violent side of that revolution spectrum. We want to go towards the peaceful side, right? So, how do we do that? Well, there's two ways to fix the relationship between wages and prices. In the general school of economics, there's two schools of thought, right? And that is government solutions and free market solutions. So, in other words, maybe the government places price controls on several industries. They limit the price of milk or eggs, or they create a minimum wage so that people can afford eggs and milk, right? So what happens if you put price controls on something? Well, what's probably going to happen is that the wages are going to get pushed down. The market's going to lower the wages, and in effect, nothing happens, right? You cap out the price, and the wages get pushed down or they stagnate, and the profits are maintained, and nothing changes. The buying power doesn't get solved. The relationship between wages and prices doesn't get fixed in order to sustain the people in that economy. What happens if you create minimum wage but you don't create price controls? Well, what's going to happen then is you're gonna create a higher minimum wage, and the corporations are just going to raise the prices of the goods and services. So in other words, you get a wage increase, inflation inflates higher than the wage increase. So you have the same problem unless, again, you control prices and wages. You have to you have to consider the relationship between wages and prices in order to solve this problem again. So that's one solution, the government solution, which would be wage controls and price controls. But the other solution is the free market solution, right? And a lot of people, particularly anti-capitalists perhaps, would argue that this solution is helpless. It's a useless endeavor. But I'd argue differently. And what I would essentially say is that how would a free market go about fixing the relationship between wages and prices? Well, they'd have to organize somehow in the free market. And one such way to organize is into unions or into worker cooperatives or consumer cooperatives, or to create consumer boycotts or nonprofit organizations, things like this, right? And what this does is it essentially gives the working class more control over the relationship between prices and wages, right? It gives them the ability to demand higher wages lest they quit. And if they quit, then there's no one producing the goods and services, and there's no profits at all, right? Until they hire more people and retrain more people, etc., right? So which solution do we want? Do we want the government regulation solution, or do we want the free market solutions, like those unions and worker cooperatives? Well, I'd argue that we want to kind of go for the free market solutions above the government regulation solutions. And here's why. A lot of people, especially conservatives or Republicans, they identify with capitalism. Capitalism is an idea in their mind that they take as part of themselves. And what that means is when you attack capitalism with price controls and wage controls and whatnot, what you're doing is you're attacking them. You're attacking their identity. And when you attack someone's identity, they get defensive. And what that means is, well, you're going to put the price controls, you're going to get that perhaps Democrat administration in there, and they're going to put price controls and wage controls in. And then, the second their term's up, they're going to elect a Republican that undoes everything and deregulates everything even more than it was before, right? So go after the free market solutions. The onus is kind of on the left here to detach themselves from their identity with government regulation, government economic regulation, and instead work with their fellow conservatives, fellow Republicans, fellow working class citizens to create unions. And I remind you, look at the average union membership across the country. It's not all conservatives, it's not all Republicans, nor is it all Democrats. It's purple, right? It's not red or blue, it's purple. Union membership is often close to 50-50 Democrat, Republican, right? There's some independents in there too. Use that to your advantage. What we see here with these unions is Democrats and Republicans working together in a way that they just can't seem to do in government. In other words, Republicans are happy to go for the free market solutions. So why aren't Democrats eager to go for those free market solutions also? It seems to me like the solution to the problems that capitalism has created are lying right there for us for the taking. But so long as the left remains attached to these government economic regulation solutions, nothing's going to happen. They're going to keep yo-yoing with the economic policy, and nothing's going to happen. Union membership used to be a lot higher back in the 1950s than it is now. And the economy worked for the working class a lot better than it does now. Union membership's like about 10% right now. I think it might have been over 30% back in the 1950s. Point is that you have to work within the bounds of capitalism, and there are solutions there to fix the economic problems. Now, there's one more factor I want to tie in here. That's globalization. So let's say, for example, that you create a union in some industry, say for the example, the United Auto Workers, the automobile industry. You create a union and you go in and you demand higher wages. And well, you get the higher wages. You get whatever you want, whatever you ask for. But 5-10 years down the line, Ford decides to send their labor overseas. That didn't really fix the problem, did it? What happened here was that we we demanded higher wages, and the corporations, capitalism, decided to just decided that it could increase its profits by finding cheaper labor overseas. So all of a sudden, U.S. jobs are lost to China or something, and that gets us back to square one. All of a sudden, well, we can't afford the things we had because we don't have jobs again, right? Or we can't afford the necessities because we lost our jobs. So, how do we fix this? How do we fix this problem? Well, the answer is organization, more organization. The answer is always more organization. So, what needs to happen is those unions need to get stronger. They need to essentially become nationalized unions. And what that does is it enables that working class and it enables the unions to take complete control over the prices and wages. And in effect, they create wage controls and price controls outside of government regulation. So the solution is the same either way. You have to fix the relationship between prices and wages one way or another. There's no way around it. You can do it with a government regulation or you can do it with unions. But again, that union solution for the reasons I gave is preferred because the Republican working class is actually willing to do it with Democrats, right? They're willing to actually organize across those political divides. So, again, to get back to what I was saying, how is it though that unions can organize and keep labor from going overseas? Well, what is required is that the unions, again, gain complete control over prices and wages. And then what you have to do is actually deflate the prices and wages. In other words, you have to cut wages and prices in order to equalize wages and prices in the United States with wages and prices in China, right? You have to remove the incentive that corporations have for sending labor overseas. The incentive is cheap labor. So you can either wait for Chinese labor to become more expensive, or you can gain control of those corporations and voluntarily accept lower wages and voluntarily lower the prices in that corporation to find an equilibrium in cost of living with the competing nations. This is the problem that globalization places on various nations, on rich nations, right? Rich nations will have a tendency to send labor overseas for profits, right? Because there's cheaper labor available overseas. The only solution is to lower your wages to match those of the countries overseas. But you can't just lower the wages because, again, the prices will be too high for anyone to afford anything. So you have to also lower the prices. Again, as I said, the only solution is organization. No matter what way you cut it, no matter what solution you want, whether you want a government solution or a free market solution, organization is required. And that means you can't be pointing the finger at the MAGA supporters or at the liberals, right? The radical left. You have to work with them. Otherwise, the corporations are gonna take you for a ride. They're gonna steal your money effectively. They're gonna exploit your labor unless you organize across these culture divides, across the political divides, the racial divides, the gender divides, the religious divides, whatever divide you can think of. You have to work together. It's the only solution. You have to set aside your differences and focus on the similarities. You have to prioritize your identity with humanity above your national identity or above your political party identity or whatever it may be. In order to, again, I just want to get back, hammer this point. In order to fix the problems of inflation, you must fix the relationship between wages and prices. And again, because of the globalized nature of the economy today, it becomes complicated when the economy of the United States starts mingling with China and India and all the nations throughout the world, right? Because there are price and wage differentials between those countries. There are cost of living differentials that cause problems when those countries start trading with each other. And right now, we're trying to implement tariffs, right, on these various nations. Tariffs won't fix the problem. All tariffs will do is increase the prices. And if their wages don't increase in conjunction with the price increases, you have just more people who can't get the things they need to survive. Again, we don't want the violent revolution. We want the peaceful revolution. What that means, again, as I said, is that the onus is on the left to relieve themselves of their identity with government regulation and work in the free market with people on the right in order to fix the economy so that it works for everybody. So thanks for watching.